The views and opinions expressed here on Wrestling Winedown are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any other agency, organization, employer, or company. What's up, guys? It's Lo, and you are tuned in to Wrestling Winedown, a female-founded and hosted podcast dedicated to professional wrestling and our favorite adult beverage. We are back with another episode of Wrestling Winedown. This is part of our series, The Life of a Wrestling Fan, where we talk to people with amazing careers who also happen to be wrestling fans. So grab your favorite glass of bubbly. We're going in for the 3 count. Joined today by Amber Charania. She is a lawyer. I know that's right. We are gonna get into it. Welcome, Amber, to Wrestling Winedown.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited. It's funny. This is so cheesy. You will see throughout this that I am full of cheesy things and cheesy sayings and I'm a Cancer, whatever. I wrote down on my virtual vision board, whatever, that I wanted to do a wrestling podcast this year. So
okay, we manifest on here too.
We're manifesting.
This is perfect. This is perfect. When did you first become a wrestling fan?
Oh my gosh, I was a youth. I had to be maybe 6-ish, because when I became a wrestling fan, I have a big brother. Mm-hmm. I have 2 siblings. I have an older sister and an older brother. I'm the baby. And so basically my brother put me onto wrestling. You know, when you're a kid, you want to be like your older siblings, right? And you're like, oh, I want to do everything you're doing. And so because he was watching wrestling, I was like, okay, I'm going to watch it with you. And since that time, I've been, with a little break, I've been hooked.
What was your first memory of wrestling? Do you remember kind of the first thing you watched where you were like, I think I might like this?
It had to have been something Shawn Michaels related or Taker related. I just remember being infatuated by it. I was like, oh, this is violent ballet. I love it. This is amazing. I was pretty hooked pretty quickly.
What has kept you interested in professional wrestling?
I really like the storylines. I'm a huge sports fan. I say sports, but really football and basketball. RIP to my Dallas Mavericks because they lost, but it's fine. But I'm a huge sports fan. So combining that with storyline, I think is the best of both worlds. And so it's great. I think especially recently, we all know the Bloodline story and everyone's like, this is Emmy worthy material, which it is. And so that's kind of what kept me interested in the sport. But I will say, I watched wrestling from when I was about 6-ish to high school. And then I was I was a huge tomboy growing up. And so I was maybe I should be girly now. And so I left wrestling behind. I'm so sorry, wrestling, that I abandoned you. But I didn't watch from I would say 2004, 2005 to 2014. So I missed the entire punk era. I missed a lot in that time.
Yeah.
And so the reason I started back watching is after my first year of law school, I was finals were over. I was flipping through the channels and I was okay, let's see what's on TV. I haven't watched this in a long time. And so I saw Monday Night Raw was on. I was let me see if I recognize anybody. John Cena was on there. I recognized him. But then I saw these 3 dudes that were just manhandling everybody. I'm who are these guys? The Shield. And so I started watching maybe a month or even a few weeks before the breakup. So
oh gosh,
I know I got hooked and then that happened. And then my heart broke and I was what is happening? This is not okay. Yeah, I would say it was a good 10 years that I wasn't watching, but I've been hooked from 2014 until present day.
Did you go back and watch some of the stuff that you missed, or you kind of I'm just going to pick up from here and proceed forward?
I think at the time I didn't, but I think recently I've been going back and watching okay, what I missed. Obviously the pipe bomb, duh, because, and then when it was the summer of Punk, doing his thing in AEW, I was I know this guy's a huge deal, so let me go back and watch some of his work. But yeah, it's been crazy. And when I started watching, Total Divas had just started then too, so
that helped. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who were some of your favorite wrestlers to watch when you first start watching versus now?
I will say I was a huge DX fan.
Oh, yes.
I loved China because I was like, you go, girl. You can be feminine, but you can still like beat some ass. And I love that. I love Trish and Lita. My hair is kind of red. It's not like Lita red, but it's kind of red. But I loved her too because she had such a like unique style. I loved Taker, although Deadass had nightmares after the whole abduction of Stephanie. And, you know, when he's like, where to, Stephanie? I like had nightmares after that. And then now you see him and he seems like such a nice dude, right? Like, so him, gosh, there were so many, and the Attitude, Stone Cold, obviously, The Rock. I was like, I don't want to just go down, name the usuals, but I think a lot of the folks in the Attitude Era I just loved watching them. And then now I obviously love the bloodline. I love Roman. I think a lot of it too has to do with the backstory. Like you get to do this with your family. So I think that aspect is really cool. And then on the women's side, love Bianca. As you can see, love Bianca, love Jade. You know, the entire women's division is killing it. And then Nikki and Brie, who obviously are no longer really like doing that, love them as well. So there are just so many. I was like, I could go on for days, but yeah.
Do you still keep up with Nikki and Brie and kind of what they do?
Yeah, so I listen to their podcast and not as regularly as I have been because the wrestling podcasts have taken over. Shout out to the Ringer Wrestling podcast. But I still follow them on Instagram and follow, you know, if they're doing any live podcasts and I can make it, I'll try to go. I've never been to one.
They have one. I think they have 3 coming up. I know they have one in New York.
Yeah, they do. I think I'm going to be out of town. So I won't be able to go, but you know, I join their wine club. And so like I get my shipment of wines every so often. And their wines are actually really, really good. Because you know how sometimes like celebrity wines can be a little spotty.
Yeah.
Or celebrity products.
Alcohol in general. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, they killed it in the wine game.
Along with being a wrestling fan, you are in the law field. When did you know that you wanted to pursue law as a profession?
Oh my gosh. So I was one of those weirdos as a kid that was like, I want to be a lawyer because it looked cool. Mm-hmm. Right. I was like, oh, that's great. I was probably like 9 or 10. And I don't really know what prompted it. I might have seen something on TV. I don't really remember, but I was just like, this looks dope. And so all throughout, I went to like a law magnet high school and like I had internships as like a 16-year-old at the criminal courthouse in Dallas. I grew up in Dallas. And so then I had an internship at a law firm my senior year and then worked for them throughout college. And yeah, I was very much like, there's no plan B. This is plan A and plan B is refer to plan A.
Were you a Law and Order fan?
I was not. I know. I was like, hot take. I was not. I was like, I can't even sit here and lie. I'm a terrible liar. But I was not. I don't know why. I wasn't a fan. And I don't know if it was like, part of it was that it was kind of gruesome. And I'm like, this is like partly why I didn't become a criminal lawyer. Because I'm like, it's a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
Also like, how real is this? But I think everyone says that, right? Like if you're a doctor, you watch Grey's, you're like, I don't know about this. But yeah.
I mean, you watch 15 seasons. I think you could be an RN. I might be an RN. I watched all the seasons.
Listen, if I didn't pass out from blood, yeah.
What was your experience of law school like?
I laugh because I'm like, it was a grind. I have never read a textbook cover to cover in my life. Like in college, like who does that? I mean, maybe there are some people that do that, but why would I ever read? I would just get a summary and call it a day.
Right.
Literally, my first year of law school, read a textbook, multiple textbooks cover to cover. Because in your law school textbooks, you have cases and case law. And so you're reading the cases, you're reading like the judge's opinions and the Supreme Court's opinions on certain things. And obviously, those are not short. And so then when you get to class, the teacher cold calls you and they're like, Miss Charania, why don't you tell us about this case? And despite this, because we're kind of one-on-one right now, I have like a genuine fear of public speaking. And so I'm just like, at that time, I was like, I read, but I got so nervous that I was like, F this, like, this is crazy. And I even had to go to one of my professors, my first year, I remember in my torts class, she asked me a question and I just like froze because I got nervous. And I went up to her afterwards and I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm not a slacker kid. I read, I can show you my notes. Like here, she's like, I've been doing this long enough to know when people get nervous and when they haven't read. And I know that you got nervous. And then she instantly became my favorite professor.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it was definitely a grind. And I would, if people ask me now if they should go to law school, I'm like, it's a commitment. So be ready for the grind. It eases up a little your second and third year, but your first year is intense. If you remember in Legally Blonde, where her professor kicked her out of class for not reading and not being prepared, people do that. Yeah. It's bananas. People do that. And I was too scared because I was like, I'm such the rule follower. Like, I'm not trying to get in trouble. I don't want anyone to look at me crazy. Like, I'm just going to read and call it a day.
So I know you mentioned if you had a plan B, it's to go back to plan A. But any point within law school where you're like, maybe another area of study, like I might be interested in that, or were you just dead set on law?
I was pretty dead set on law. And especially on the entertainment side, and I know we're going to get to that in a bit, but like everything I ever did from high school onward was to prepare for this. Like in undergrad, I did the basic majoring in poli-sci and minoring in history and on the pre-law track. And I knew that I wanted to do like agreements and be in the music industry and stuff like that. So throughout law school, I was president of the Sports and Entertainment Law Society. I had an internship with a music lawyer. I had an externship with the Atlanta Hawks legal department, all these things. And I was like, this is the goal, tunnel vision. We're going to do it.
You currently serve as the Senior Director of Legal and Business Affairs at Downtown Music Holdings. How has this experience treated you?
Man, it's been amazing, I will say. So when I first started practicing, I was a pure music lawyer and I was like, I don't know how to do anything else. So maybe I should go explore some other areas of practice, like corporate, something more broad where I can learn a lot. And so when I got to downtown, I was like, this is like the perfect job. It's like both my corporate and music background. So it's been an incredible experience. I work with an amazing team, and work I feel like can always be tough, but you want to make sure you have a solid team around you. Be it your boss, your peers, whomever makes up your team. You want to make sure you have like a solid squad. And I feel like I'm grateful in that way because that doesn't always happen. So.
Right. Talk to me a little bit about music law. What does that consist of? What did your everyday life kind of look like when you first got into law after graduating and taking the bar and all of that?
So you can have like a range of clients, right? And so you can have, songwriters as clients, you can have artists, you can have managers, you can have producers, you can have entire like organizations like music companies as clients when you're in private practice, meaning like when you're practicing at a law firm versus being in-house like I am now. And so you can have a wide array of clients, and a lot of it is individual artists that you're servicing. And so you'll see the plaque back there, the platinum plaque. So the first law firm I worked for after graduating, Kevin Gates was a client. And so we like helped paper and clear his album. And so my boss gifted me that, at the time, my first platinum plaque, because his album went platinum. So, yeah, it was really, really cool. I learned a ton. But one thing that stuck with me the most is that when you're counsel for artists and when you're, an attorney representing artists, you're not just their lawyer. Like, you're their confidant, you're their therapist, you're like all of these things because they trust you so much with all of this and making sure, you don't get into bad deals. Like Nicki Minaj said, best legal team, so the deals is ill. Like, it's real. Like, you got to make sure you have a good legal team. But in that, like, they'll come and run business ideas by you or even their non-music ventures. Like, oh, I want to start a clothing line. What do you think about this? And you're like, I mean, it's your line. So whatever makes you happy. But, it becomes like much more than like an attorney-client relationship. It becomes like you're really their confidant at that point and their business advisor and all of these things in one. So it's also really special to see them at work. I have so much respect for creatives. I am not creative in the least bit. And so when I see artists, when I see singers, songwriters, rappers, musicians, any artists, like I'm always so fascinated with their creative process because I'm like, I can't do that, but that's really dope that you could do that. And let me help you protect that.
So you mentioned you kind of wear all these hats when you are representing a musician. How do you deal with that? Because there's one side of it being a lawyer, but there's also one side of it being, their therapist. You're basically their friend, their confidant, like you said at that point. How do you manage that? How do you make sure there's boundaries in place and that you're comfortable with that, progression of a relationship like that?
That is a really important question, and I'm glad you asked it. A lot of times, people generally will be like, you're the lawyer, so don't you know everything? You have to be very confident in what you know and what you don't know. And there is nothing wrong with not knowing the answer to something. And I think too many times people are like, well, I should know the answer to this. It's one thing if you've been doing something for ever, which with a caveat, something will inevitably come up that you haven't dealt with. But
right.
If it's something basic, like sure, like know the answer. But if there's something that's like complex and like you don't know the answer, it's okay to sit there and be like, hey, I don't know the answer, but I can help you find out. Or I don't know the answer, but hey, talk to this accountant that is better suited to answer your question. Or hey, talk to this tour manager who is better suited to answer the question, because a lot of times you're playing that role as well as like the point person for all these different avenues. Like, hey, you're a lawyer and I have a network of people and I'm happy to refer you. I will certainly not take the bait in trying to answer a tax question, a accounting question, none of that. I'm like, I don't know, but I'm happy to, point you to the right direction. And so I think that's one of the keys of that. And I think in terms of like developing that, there are some clients where you're like, or some attorneys that are like, I'm just your lawyer dog. Like, don't invite me to your studio sessions. Don't invite me to your release parties. I'm here to do my job and go home. Mm-hmm. And that's fine. But when you are a true music fan and you really enjoy the work and you really enjoy music and you enjoy the creative process, I feel like it's a privilege to be in those rooms when they're creating, to be in those spaces and feeling like you're really supporting your clients. Again, like I don't think that being in the studio with your client makes you a great lawyer by any means, but if that's something that you're okay with and you're okay with spending your time on, and why not be supportive? It's like supporting a friend. But of course there are boundaries. Like I had someone tell me like, oh yeah, a client tried to FaceTime me at 4 a.m. I said, that's never happened to me because I don't create a space for that. I'm like,
right.
Nope. We're not doing that. We're keeping it professional here. Like absolutely.
Exactly.
It's all about like creating your boundaries and creating a space where you can be supportive, but also mainly for your own sanity, right? Like you have to draw a line somewhere with trying to have work-life balance. I'm one to talk, but I'm trying to be better.
Your focus in your career has been entertainment, specifically music. What prompted you to pick that specific track?
Yeah. So I think the thing about it is like, I have a few friends that are creatives and I've always been that person that stands up for, and I'm putting this in quotes, the person who's like the
underdog.
And so, yep. And so I never want to see people like that get taken advantage of and be exploited for their creativity. Like that's insane. We all have jobs. Mine just so happens to be a lawyer, and this person just happens to be an artist or a creative or a songwriter. And that's how they put food on their table. And they shouldn't get taken advantage of just because that's the path that they chose to put food on their table. Like that's crazy to me that people would do that. And so I'm so big on like standing up for people and standing up for what's right. And like, don't take advantage of people. Like that's crazy. Don't do that. And so I always want to like help people protect their craft, protect their magic, protect all of that hard work that they put into their creativity and their creative outlet.
Take us through a normal day as a lawyer.
Oh.
I know it. You're probably like, here we go.
I'm like, well, the funny thing is there is no normal day, right? When you're in-house, you could be dealing anything from like actual music contracts to insurance things to, oh, someone wants to do a sponsorship deal. So like, can you review this agreement, to a photo licensing thing, to it's so varied which is why I love my job, because I never get bored.
Mm-hmm.
And I could be working on like a trademark issue, or I could be working on whatever. And so it genuinely does vary throughout the day.
So who are some of the creatives that you can think of off the top of your head who you currently have under that umbrella at Downtown Music Holdings?
Oh my gosh, there are so many. So Downtown is made up of a few different companies. And so we have some excellent artists on each of our rosters. One artist is Peso Pluma, is a client of the Downtown Group. Raja Kumari, she is a South Asian artist. Love her. She's a client as well. Gosh, there's so many. People ask this and I'm like, my mind just goes blank. The John Lennon estate, Miles Davis estate, to name a few. But yeah, we have some good ones.
Have you been able to intertwine your love of wrestling into your career at any point?
Kind of, in the sense of like, there are a lot of people who are in the music industry who also love wrestling. And so I've been able to meet some people that way. But I think not necessarily anything I do on a day-to-day, but events like Wale Mania, right? Like that's wrestling and hip hop. I went to Wale Mania for the first time this past WrestleMania in Philly, and I was floored. I was like, this is dope. This is so fun. This is incredible. And so events like that, I think, are super important. I think when people think of a wrestling fan, they think of like one type of person.
Yeah.
And like, no, that's such a like old school way of thinking. Wrestling fan, like we're everywhere. We may not be outright with it. And I will be the first one to tell you, I was such a closet wrestling fan for a long time. And then when I moved to New York, I was like, you know what? F this. Yeah, I like wrestling and what? Like, and so I think that there are probably opportunities. Like I'm sure there might be a time where, you know, we get one of our clients' music gets licensed or something like that in the future. Obviously, depending on what their wrestling promotions, creative teams want to use. But yeah, there's definitely an opportunity there for sure.
Speaking of Wale Mania, we do have these events. I know there's like a remix rumble. They have those now where they play the superstar entrances at like a nightclub theme and stuff like that. Do you feel like these events are important in not only cultivating that wrestling relationship, but also the relationship of like the music industry within wrestling?
Yeah, I think events like that are so important to the wrestling community because it's like it expands sort of what it is and what it means to be a wrestling fan, right? It's not just like, hey, I'm going to shows, but hey, I'm going out and they're playing wrestling theme songs. And I've gone out to a bar where like the DJ will randomly play like John Cena's music and I'll look up and I'm like, what's going on? And then I'm like panning the room. I'm like, did anybody else catch that? Did anybody catch that? But like to have a space where that is the sole reason that we've come together, I think it's amazing. It's dope.
I think especially with hip hop too, like it's so embedded in professional wrestling. I think about Kendrick Lamar, you know, he had the Sweet Chin Music reference in Not Like Us. And there's all these other references that we've had along the way within hip hop R&B that when I think they combine those two, it really is something magical. So, you know, hopefully other people kind of get the hint and they start having these events as well. Because at the end of the day, it cultivates that community that goes beyond, oh, we just go to shows. It's no, we go out and enjoy music together. Or, you know, we're seeing the superstars and wrestlers that we enjoyed growing up and now on stage having a good time with us. So definitely think that's important.
Yeah. And like the whole like Sexy Red being TV, like I was like, is this happening? Why not? Right. And I think especially today's wrestling world, at least I can speak to, you know, WWE. I will admit I don't, you know, keep up with the other promotions as much, but you know, seeing all of this crossover that's happening and like so many people being like, I'd love to be a part of WrestleMania, and having these celebrities come in and actually kill it, like Bad Bunny killing it. This is not what he does on a day to day. You know, Logan Paul, say what you will about him, but Sir is talented, which probably makes people even more mad. But these celebrities coming in and like, I think that also speaks to how much respect they have for the wrestling business, because they're like coming in, taking it very seriously. And I'm not just here for like a cute spot. I'm actually trying to do something here. So,
well, I think about Snooki. when she had her
Yeah.
when she had her WrestleMania appearance. You noticed the difference in how she took it, and I love Snooki. I watch Jersey Shore,
Me too.
but you know, you look at how Snooki took it versus like a Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny really was passionate about being in that ring, and I feel like he really worked hard to make sure that he was the best that he possibly could be in those appearances. Now, someone like Snooki, I don't think that was her sole focus. I think her sole focus was to get that cute little spot, but I think they both served their purposes
Yeah.
through the specific time periods that they were in.
But no, you're 100% right. Like each of those spots kind of have their purpose, but the crossover has been like incredible.
Definitely. Do you see similarities between the dynamics in the law field versus the wrestling field, specifically with both fields being historically male dominated?
Yeah, I definitely do. But I also don't think that it's specific to these two industries. I think it's just across whatever industry that, or most industries, I would say. And so, you're always trying to fight for that spot and show that, hey, I'm in the room as well. But in the beginning of my career, I was admittedly like very, hey, head down, do your thing. And maybe that's like the first gen immigrant mindset. Like my family is South Asian. I was born, as I said, in Texas. And so just having that instilled in you as a kid, like just head down, do your work, happy to be here. And then I was like, actually, I'm happy to be here and I can probably contribute more than like these dudes in the room. And as you get into your career, and I think it's any career, you start to build your confidence and realize your value and understand what you do bring to the table and, start to speak up about it. And I think that's really important because a lot of times if you don't, as the old saying goes, like closed mouths don't get fed, but you have to say something and you have to speak up. And it's not just incumbent upon you, it's whoever you're working for as well. Like notice when people are not being, addressed in a meeting or they want to say something, but then they hesitate or they stop. And I feel like my boss right now is really good at that. If he notices, like obviously most meetings and stuff are via Zoom or via Google Meet or what have you. And if someone unmutes and mutes again, he'll be like, hey, like, were you going to say something? Especially in larger meetings and stuff, he's very good at that. Because sometimes people are like, oh, there's too many people here. Screw it. I'm not going to say anything. And so like making sure that you're working with the team and have people that you report to who take notice of stuff like that and really make sure to like bring people up with them as well.
That reminds me of when you were just talking about earlier about how you were in that law class and you got nervous.
Yeah.
What would you tell your college self now, being where you are?
I'd be like, girl, you're going to get through. You're gonna do it. And like, man, what would I tell my college self? Like, girl, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. And I think too, like, I always wanted to be in-house counsel at a music company. And now I'm here and I'm like, whoa, what? And so, it's all about setting the next goal and like knowing that there's something to work toward. I think, I would also tell my younger self, take a breather. Like, you don't have to take life so seriously. What kid is like, I can't fool with this nonsense, all these juvenile antics because I'm trying to be a lawyer at age 15. Like, who does that? Like, that's crazy. That's actually crazy. So I would like tell my younger self, it's going to be fine. You're going to get to where you need to be present and be where you are physically and mentally and emotionally. Be where you are.
What advice would you give to a woman looking to enter the law field?
I would say if you want to do it, get after it. Don't be confident in yourself, be confident in your abilities, and don't let anyone tell you no. When people tell you no or something can't be done, that's a lot of their projection on you. It's like, you can't do this or you're too afraid to do this. And that's not to say like to put anyone down, but we've all done it. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe someone's climbing Mount Everest. I could never. But that's because that's our own fears, right? Climbing Mount Everest sounds crazy. Like, that's scary to me. But you have to realize that a lot of times when people say those things, it's really a projection of how they feel and not speaking to your own abilities or speaking to you and how driven you are. And so just remember that you have that in you. And whenever someone says that, just be like, take it with a grain of salt. Okay, cool. I appreciate your input, but I got it. And you keep it moving.
And then you show them you can do it.
Yeah. My favorite thing is when people tell me I can't do something. I'm like, okay, cool.
And then you rock it, girl.
That's right. That's right. And I was like, that ain't nothing but me and God. That is nothing but me and God.
Thank you, Amber, so much for joining me here on Wrestling Winedown. Where can the people keep up with you on social media?
So funny enough, I can only do one social media platform at a time. And so I do have an Instagram. It's Amber_Boss Lady. Boss Lady is one word. And the same handle for Threads because, why not? But I'm not very active on Threads. So Instagram is where you can find me.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Wrestling Winedown. You can find all of our other episodes available wherever you listen to your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and iHeartRadio. We are on Twitter and Instagram at WWDCAST. We also have our official merch store, which you can find at shop.wrestlingwinedownlv.com. Let us know what you thought about this episode. What was your favorite part? Until next time, enjoy your wine, and of course, enjoy your wrestling. Cheers!